if I'm a young Gen Z coming into an organization, a top brand, and I'm very excited, and there I have a bad boss. So what's the impact for the Gen Z specifically, for considering they're new, they're beginning, and how it can impact them professionally or even personally?
Great question, Nikhil. I think the personal and professional lives have now become very intertwined. They always were, but today the Gen Z comes and values. One is work-life balance. We've all heard about authenticity. Empathy has become even more important with the recent COVID crisis that we had, and then transparency. And with all these things, they look for the positive work environment. So I think the first foremost thing that if you're with a toxic boss and happens is disengagement. They're very conscious, they're very aware of the emotional impact that is happening on them. So for the fact like, oh, I don't feel good today, right? And it's the one day that they don't feel good also obviously kind of gets publicized in a larger sense, but they're not feeling good is very important to them. And so the disengagement happens. I also think this generation compared to the others is a very insecure and a low self-esteem generation, right? We've all heard about the fact that we're all driven by the likes on our Instagram, how many viewers we have. And it really talks about how, and the number of suicides that we have been hearing around the world, increasing in the population, which is just 13 to, the 21, 22-year olds. So the mental health gets impacted if you have somebody, a boss who's criticizing you, is sort of breathing down your neck, you're not getting appreciated. There is one study that I had read upon, which, Nikhil, if you'd guess, how many times, how many people want to be appreciated in a day? What is the percentage do you think there would be of the Gen Zs?
No idea. Go ahead.
65% of Gen Zs wanted one appreciation a day. And guess what the remaining 35% wanted? It's not no appreciation. They wanted at least 2 or more ways of being appreciated in a day. So you just think about their esteem at where they want and what they want, and then how much can the mental health be impacted with.
Yeah.
I think the third is really about then goes to burnout. I remember in the last organization that I was working in, and we had an employee engagement survey that most organizations would have. We had a question, and we were, again, a tech company, a very new company, started in 2020 with majority, I think about 30-35% people being in the Gen Z space. In our engagement survey, our burnout rates were always one of the top 3 lookouts, with high scores. But if you looked at the sub-question, the HR team would always be like, oh, but when we say that, do you have enough workload? They would be like, no. Ranging 80-90%, not enough workload, which is fine, which is great. Do you have flexibility? Yes. So we always wondered what was this burnout then, because a typical, question around burnout has been working beyond the 9 to 5 for the Western world. In India, obviously, it's taken for granted that you spend about 12 hours a day working. So it wasn't the long hours. It wasn't the fact that you were working from home and, the whole hybrid workplace that we're talking about today. But it really was about the negativity that they were feeling emotionally and mentally. The draining that was happening due to not just being in many meetings, but the way those meetings were conducted, the way people spoke to you. So that was the burnout that we're seeing a lot more in organizations and, the Gen Z getting impacted by it. Overall, I feel all relations get impacted. The Gen Z is able to, if you have a toxic boss, it impacts the way you relate to your colleagues, the way it relates to your personal lives, etc., because of the overall impact it has. So I think those are some of the major impacts, and primarily then it happens to quitting, right? They're just unhappy, and the job hopping. I think even the millennials are known for their job hopping, and I'm a millennial. I was known like, oh, every couple of years you kind of job hop. And it's always seen as negativity. But I feel like today it's important for managers to also, organizations to understand why it's happening. I'm not saying you job hop every other second, which I think is the instant gratification story that we hear of Gen Zs, that if you don't like this, let's move on to the next thing. Uh, but I don't, that's what's happening as well. But I don't think that's the great strategy either.